Welcome, everyone. I'm Alfred Lambermont Weber, and we're here with four distinguished persons of the Turtle Island, North American indigenous nations, who will introduce themselves. And we'll be discussing the question of, will North America, Turtle Island and Taina Key, i.e. the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean archipelago, break up into regions? And we've been brought together initially because when I first joined Stanford Research Institute, in January of 1977, they had a contract with the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency for a 50-year study of the of the USA, the 50-year future study of the USA, starting in 1977. Willis Harman, who was the director of the Futures Unit, drew me aside and said, "Alfred, in the future, the U.S. is going to break apart into regions." And I assume that that is what SRI reported in its 50-year future study to the USA. And in the book, which is part of the exercise that we're doing today, a public inquiry, which is available on Amazon, one of our participants, Spirit Warrior, has written a chapter on his views as to whether the USA will North America, Turtle Island, and Taina Key, the USA, Canada, and the Caribbean archipelago, will they break up into regions? Today is June 20th, 2024. And we already have one U.S. presidential candidate, Donald John Trump, who has said publicly that if he is not elected president, that the U.S. is going to break up into regions. And you have, we have public opinion polls of red states versus blue states, and significant numbers, up to 33% of voters in red states saying that they would prefer their states becoming independent nations. And these are in the public opinion polls. And we even have some ballot measures or requests for ballot measures for secession, for example, in Texas in 2024. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the proceedings over to the participants, starting with Spirit Warrior to introduce themselves, and then we'll ask each of the participants to start addressing these questions. Spirit Warrior, over to you, and then to John Cipolla. They're members of Spirit Warrior is the Attorney General of the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, and if each member could please explain which nation they're members and what roles they fulfill. Thank you. Over to you, Spirit Warrior.
Thank you, Alfred. My Canadian name is Glenn Bogue, B-O-G-U-E, and I have been an Olympian for Canada. I have been a scholar. I've written a 5-book series with my master's degree in history, and I'm a lawyer, much embattled by the Law Society of Ontario, who are just digging their heels in against the Indigenous people. And in a book series that I wrote called the Books of Isis, I carefully researched the history of King Solomon's Asherah, the woman of the DNA, the woman of the Tree of Life. It's a fascinating field to be in. But lo and behold, I find out that there is an eagle and condor prophecy, which I was not aware of when I started this work. And in that prophecy, it predicts that 500 years after Cortez appeared in Mexico in like 1513 or so. The orientation would in North America, particularly, would stop going east-west with the railroads, which is a highly destructive direction, and would return to a north-south orientation of future growth and immense prosperity for the people of the Western Hemisphere. And we are on the cusp of that happening. And as the Americas have been set up to battle each other on a division of Democrat and Republican, that division was pre-planned by the Bankers Association in 1924. That's in my book 5. And lo and behold, here, like Alfred knows, these predictions, planned, long planned, etc., have attempted to do this. And now this control of North America, let's say, in the Caribbean, will the people rise up now and not only assert their, I guess, whether the Democrat or Republican, would they assert their own individual sovereignty and rights to the massive resources by birthright of the Canadian Shield? So back to you, Alfred. That's my introduction.
Thank you very much, Spirit Warrior. And now we'd like to ask John Cipolla, Sisapi Mukwa of the Alliance of Indigenous Nations. Over to you, John.
Judge Alfred, if boys could go before me, and I'll be at my computer in 2 minutes, and then I'll go last.
Oh, great.
That makes it easier.
Yeah. Well, boys.
Okay.
Yes. Could you please introduce yourselves and the people of the Salmon?
I am Bold Boys, appointed headsman, due to experience and knowledge that I have in the courts and in case writing since 2008. Research had taken me prior to that. In 2008, we came across a document written by Igor Panarin. We actually, political science professor Igor Panarin. And in the first part of his 2-page letter, he actually wrote that it was very possible, due to the fact and nature of Canada, U.S. Inc., that they very well could be disintegrated due to their nature and style of government. So as I was made aware of this document, and that it was very possible that the regions that we talked about, and I strongly felt at one time that Western Canada, Alberta, BC, Washington State, Oregon, could have been renamed Cascadia. And because our people, Hokulea all went all the way down to Oregon, and that BC are peoples of the Salmon, and Alberta could have easily joined us because of the proximity to water. Our people enjoyed the Sea Elk enjoyed the interior of BC. The Blackfeet enjoyed lower Alberta. The Pugon and Treaty 6 enjoyed northern Alberta. So all of these these entities all are based in what English law calls proclamations. And so we have never been removed from our lands. And if I use some of the proclamations, Queen Anne says we have a right to a tribunal to appeal any case that the third-party courts had put against us. So in Queen Anne's Order in Council, we have the right to our own tribunal. And that's what we've established with our peoples of the Salmon, what used to be known as British Columbia. And so King George said the same thing. We cannot be dispossessed of our lands without them purchasing property, and they never have. I think the closest that they talked about purchasing Vancouver Island was James Douglas, and Downing Street said no to him. So they've never purchased the lands. And actually, the King Chief Canada was pronounced as a brother to Queen Victoria. My sister, we are born, and she says, as one Indian is alive from generation to generation, it'll always remain our lands. So now, since the Republic, or not necessarily the Republic, I believe, is still English law, but the U.S. Inc. isn't, and the U.S. Inc. is a corporation made up of the various states. So is as if we had a kingdom going back to King Chief Canada and his family. His King Chief family, the first ruler of this kingdom was Chi'ikuk, and he was De Soto. And from Chi'ikuk came Gunny Gunny, and that was King Chief Canada. And now his name is Stephen Adjakote, is the same family and alive today, him and his sister. So if you're talking about what is real of Turtle Island, the real is that we have a kingdom, and they could never topple our kingdom. So they made proclamations that protected the various nations, the various arrows and nations that came together to form our kingdom. And that 572 areas was between North, Central, and South America. So that's my take on how Igor Panarin has stated, yes, it can very easily be disassembled. So thank you.
Well put. Well put, Boboy.
Thank you, Bobois. Yes, Sherry LePage, yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Alfred. I am a Hassa. I am a healer. I've been working in the breath of life work with people in biodynamic cranial psychotherapy. My background is in being out in that field with people, and I was speaking with Spirit Warrior a little bit about the fifth dimension. And when I sensed right away that things weren't quite right for me in the setting of a lot of things regarding the world shifting and the power shifting, I started to do research, found some very good leads that led me to realize how much the world trade mechanisms of the British Imperial Empire, colonialism, and all of that came upon us since very many generations ago, and was the cause of our land grabs and resources grabs. I aligned with the peoples of the Salmon and Babois for the reasons that I really truly believe, finally in international law, the recognition of the hereditary claims to the lands and resources of Kanatin. And as a result of that, and the shift in the field of the war machines, the military industrial complex, the banks, and all of these things that have always been the cause of many wars, is banking and yes, well, the Vatican. Anyways, I've basically come to this place now where I'm really here present in the field of representing all of us healers on the planet that really have a sense that there's a real immediate need for gentleness, matriarchy, and that I'm in that field right now. And I truly stand with the voice on the hereditary claims. And I really have been noticing in the meetings that I've been involved with is the building of the energy around that. And when I read the article about the 9 regions, the interview, I was just blown away. I could sense, I could feel the energy, and I could feel the prophecy unfolding. So I speak in this kind of way. I'm not literal. I'm not lawful. I'm more of a hasa. I'm more into that field of the energy that's among us. But Lena.
Thank you. Good. So I just wanted to I'm just here I'm wanted to take just a moment to upload for the viewing audience for their convenience and to upload the book in case they wanted to view it. The book where this chapter appears, and we'll immediately after that we'll be going to Spirit Warrior for his more extended and to the other participants. But just for a moment, I'm going to go into share screen for the viewing audience, and so that they can see. Here
While you're doing that, Alfred, let's have John introduce himself.
Oh, John is, thank you so much. I got a bit confused.
I know how focused you get.
Let me just stop that share because
No, it's okay.
John is here now. My apologies, John. I got flummoxed. You can see I'm not that good an introducer. John is the leader and coordinator of the Alliance of Indigenous Nations that your humble servant is part of, along with others. John, over to you.
Thank you, Judge Alfred. Just a little bit of my background is my educational background is law. I have a law degree from Thomas Cooley Law School in Lansing, Michigan. And then most of my work experience up until about 2003 was working for a real estate development company and national real estate and development company. And so I did that for a very long time. In about 2003, 2002, I decided to change my life and switch gears and get into all the healing arts and study all the healing arts. And that's when I really started to wake up and see what was going on in the world. And I can only speak from my perspective and the lens in which I see the world through my experiences. And I started to see, well, after that, short time thereafter, I was just before that, I was a New York State Justice of the Peace for 4 years as well. And when I was a part of that system, I still had not awoken to the fraud of the legal system. And so I feel it's important to mention this. So I was a part of it without being aware of it. And I'm making this point for a couple of reasons, because many people who are involved in this dysfunctional system that's oppressing all of us, they're not even aware that they're a part of this well-oiled system. Okay, there are many that are, obviously, that know what's going on, but a great number have no idea that they're even a part of this. So I feel it's important to mention that. I had no idea that I was going to be involved with the Alliance of Indigenous Nations. It all happened as a result of, well, let me give you a little bit more of my background. I also ran in 2013. I ran for, 2017, I ran for Hawaii's first congressional seat. I believe that people were awake in 2017. Maybe I was a little idealistic, but I believe people were awake enough at that time in the state of Hawaii that I could run as an independent and that I could win because of the consciousness of the island, because there's many, many people who are conscious on the islands, and the population is just over 1 million. And so, but what happened was I had my first taste of the mainstream oppression and media, and my name never really even got out there because I was going up against a billionaire who owned hotels on the Strip in Waikiki, and my name was never even put out there. And so I was aware back in 2017 of how the mainstream media oppresses and suppresses. It's very easy to keep candidates. If you want somebody to win and don't want somebody to even be in the race, it's very easy to do. And so I learned that firsthand. Going forward, I never expected to be involved with the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, but what happened was in 2021, I got adopted by our Grand Chief, Wabisca Muckwa. Wabisca Muckwa, he just retired, God bless him. He has been fighting this thing for 50 years in all branches of government. And it wasn't until I started to hear of the atrocities. I had already been sweating for years and going to powwows with the Indigenous, but it wasn't until I heard, in fact, I live in a very Indigenous area, which is the Midland area of Ontario, Canada. But it wasn't until I heard of the atrocities from our grand chiefs and our clan mothers and our hereditary chiefs. And I started to hear these atrocities, and I couldn't believe that they were still going on, because I was educated to believe, oh, that happened a long time ago. That's not happening anymore. And that's not the way it is. It's still going on. It's in front of our faces, the genocide, the cultural genocide, the sterilization of the women, the theft of our sons and daughters. It's all still going on. And I couldn't help get involved. And so thus the Alliance of Indigenous Nations. And here I am today with the Glenn Bogues, the Popoys, the Sherrys, and the Judge Alfreds of the world. And we're doing the best that we can. In terms of the separation of these into the was it 7 or 9 territories that were 9? Okay. So I can just tell you from my experience and my lens where I see things is I just came back from Florida. Florida now has exceeded the population of New York. Florida operates on a budget. New York operates on a major deficit. Florida operates in the black, while New York is operating in the red, and a big red. So this whole talk of succession and breaking off, it's been happening and at the micro level for a long time. Texas, right? Texas they consider themselves to be a republic and separate. I wouldn't be surprised if Florida is separated. So anyways, that's my background, and I wanted to share it. I'm happy to be here today, and however I can contribute, I'd like to contribute. And I just want to say, sitting in the seat as moderator of the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, I've been able to see firsthand how the story is very consistent globally. If 1 or 2 nations came and said, oh, the crown did this to our nation and suppressed our people, it might be hard to believe. But when every nation starts to stand up globally and the story is consistent, whether you're in the landmass known as New Zealand, the landmass known as Australia, the landmass known as Canada, the landmass known as America, and we hear that we've been colonized, and right, and then these people came in and started to apply their laws over our laws, there's no denying what's happened. And the story is just the same wherever you go. So this movement, I just like to share from my perspective again, it is a global movement that will not be stopped. More and more nations are coming to the surface every day. More hereditary chiefs are stepping up and coming out of the woodwork every day. And so this is happening. It's not going to be stopped, and just in consistent with what Glenn was saying, it's the eagle and the condor prophecy. When the eagle in the north soars with the condor of the south, the people of the four directions will come together and co-create this new earth. And that's what's happening right now. That's what we're experiencing. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. It's a lot of work for a lot of us, as we know, but we just got to keep going. And I believe we are on the cusp of turning this whole thing around right now.
Hey,
Thank you very much.
Miigwech.
Um,
Miigwech.
and for a very inspiring intro. I'd like to just briefly, for the benefit of our viewing audience, go to share screen and just to share for our audience briefly if they wish to access the book that we're talking about in the future, will the United States of America break up into regions? And even though we're talking about Turtle Island, which is Canada, the United States, and Taina Cay, the Caribbean, you can see that's the cover of the book, and that had all those colors you can see. That includes Central America, the Caribbean, and from the book description there. And you can get it in either ebook, Kindle, or in paperback. And Spirit Warrior Glenn Bogue, the Attorney General of the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, has contributed a part, extended part to the book, and we encourage you to go into this and to go into this question that was first given to us. Again, I just want to mention that in January of 1977, when I first joined the Futurist Unit, the Center for the Study of Social Policy at Stanford Research Institute, SRI, at Menlo Park, California, they had a contract with the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency to study, quote, alternative 50-year futures of the United States of America. And Willis Harmon, the director, pulled me aside the first week that I reported for duty and said, Alfred, in the future, the United States is going to break up into regions. And so I assume, I was not given a copy of the final report, that's what SRI may very well have reported to the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. And that's part of our work here. I also just wanted to show you, it'll take just a moment. Let me just stop the share and just go to a brief share here. This is what we'll be discussing today. This is Spirit Warriors Part 3, Indigenous Sovereign Nations. Will the United States of America and Turtle Island break up into regions? Will North America, Turtle Island, and Taina Cay, the United States, USA, Canada, and the Caribbean archipelago break up into regions? That's the flag, the national flag of Taina Cay, which is the Caribbean, starting with Cuba. That's I was raised in Cuba and get my Taino heritage and DNA from there. That's where Columbus first landed. The Taino greeted them with friendship, food, and embraced them. And in turn, the Taino chieftains and priests were murdered by the Spanish under Christopher Columbus. They were murdered, and the entire Taino nation was genocided. So that's what the Spanish and the so-called Christians and had in mind for the nations. So thank you very much. And so I'm now going to turn it over to Spirit Warrior to just go for your first in-depth presentation of the discussion on that key question that we just addressed. Over to you, Spirit Warrior Glenn Bogue. You're on mute, I believe.
Thank you. This global battle that John is alluding to, it goes back a very long time. Those who have studied the history of our solar system would quickly concede the fact that the Earth used to be outside of Mars, between Mars and Jupiter, because of something called Bode's mathematical law, B-O-D-E, Bode's law. And it states that, stands for the proposition that there cannot be a planet in the third position where Earth is, third from the sun. And there must be a planet between Mars and Jupiter that many astronomers, they theorize was exploded or was hit by something or disintegrated. They haven't got quite to the point that the Earth used to, which can't be here between Venus and Mars. We used to be outside of Mars, where the planet was much bigger and was covered in water primarily. It shone like a blue jewel to many different ships going by, et cetera, from other planets, other solar systems, et cetera. The bright jewel of our solar system. Well, a planet X exists outside of Pluto. Caltech astronomers, Michael Brown and mathematician Badajian, have now proven it exists out past Pluto mathematically. They're looking for it now. And so we're on the cusp of great realizations that their planet back around 400,000 BC, not one of their moons, knocked us inside of Mars, leaving behind the Pacific crust and having the Earth suffer what's called the Marianas Trench in the Pacific Ocean. That's the Pacific crust that was shorn off. Geo, key of the Earth, the ancient languages call that the name for Earth. The cleaved planet went careening inside Mars, wiped out Mars's atmosphere, and ends up wobbling 23.5 degrees as a very shaky place for the beings that are on it. So in the days that it was outside of Mars, the landmass was together called Pangaea, and the Ojibwe nation keeps that in their ancient histories. And then Pangaea, when it was struck, was then, of course, split apart and most recognized the east coast of South America and the west coast of Africa, and kind of like go together like a jigsaw puzzle. And that is why there are the same DNA people called the Solutrean in Western Europe on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, and on the east coast of Canada. We were cousins, brothers, sisters at one time in one landmass. So when we refer to Turtle Island, Alfred, we actually include South America because the Métis Grand Chief Wabiska, who was mentioned, his lineage goes back to the original father of the first Métis child in Ontario, Jean Nicolet, who was the real reason for the fur trade, not Samuel Champlain, the way the French Canadians like to boast. But his indigenous side goes all the way back to Bolivia, to Kanata, or as Sherry said, Kanaten, Bolivia. That whole north-south, the people in Bolivia have the legend that the beings that came down from the heavens and had intercourse with the gorgeous females of this planet and created a whole new race of people intergalactically. That knowledge was then taken by the Métis indigenous lineage down the Amazon, through the Caribbean, the Arawak and the Carib we're all island hopping, great fun, meeting all kinds of people, having great parties on Saturday night, et cetera, and a great festival of human exuberance. Up the Mississippi, the Hopi, et cetera, all the way up into Montreal, where they met Cartier, and the whole exchange. Where are you from? France. Where are you from? We're from Canada, Bolivia. But with that history being said, there's a Reverend Paul Wallace. I just got his video the last about 2 days ago. And in his book, Reverend Wallace, who's 30 years a biblical scholar, like me, Christian, I'm Catholic. I don't know what his formal denomination is, but he went around the world, Alfred, and he interviewed the clan mothers, the weirdos, the outcasts, the women whose hair has never been cut, and they live at the edge of the towns of England, even. And all over the world is this tale of this woman who at least taught the human beings which plants are medicine, what foods are not to be eaten. Probably took the potato from the Peruvian highlands where it was poisonous, changed the DNA to be edible in order to feed her people. Now, this woman is credited with being the creatrix of the first Adam and Eve in either Tigris Euphrates or in Ethiopia, or both. Now, that's the legend that Reverend Wallace reports in his book called Echoes of Eden. And oddly enough, it is the conclusion of my book 4 called The Black Madonna, the goddess Isis of Egypt and the Magdalene in the wedding at Cana. And with that sentence, I say that because the whole thing of Jesus being married to Mary Magdalene, the Da Vinci Code, etc., sparked off a huge subconscious awakening, because all the lawn chairs, the beach chairs in the Caribbean on my holidays then were almost every chair had the Da Vinci Code on it, not because of the murder mystery, likely because of this wild realization that in Da Vinci's Last Supper, the one to his right, our left, was in fact Mary the Magdalene. But that wedding is a very ancient wedding. We won't go into it now. It's in the ancient texts. But I happened to be in the audience at the University of Pennsylvania in 2006 when National Geographic announced its result from saliva tests taken all over the world of women whose mitochondria goes way, way back to 200,000 BC, Alfred, where it stops. It doesn't go back millennia past that, back 10 million years. It stops as if something had happened. And they trace it to one woman in Ethiopia, okay? And then the scientist, Spencer Wells, the leading DNA guy in the world, says, but it's not Eve. And I put my hand up in the audience from the 8th row with all these scholars there from UPenn. I was a contractor of houses at the time. I didn't know what I was even doing there, but I put my hand up. I'm a brave guy. It sure sounds like Eve. And in fact, Dr. Wells, that story, 200,000 Alfred, is being told in the cuneiform tablets in this museum at UPenn down the hall. Why don't you and I take a walk down there and see what the ancient records are showing of those cuneiform tablets. So now we've got the modern DNA and the ancient cuneiform tablets of Sumer, our oldest written records, saying the same thing, that this woman, the goddess, many different names because the languages got scrabbled at Babel, that this is the ancient indigenous knowledge that, number one, a female scientist changed the ovum of an ape into human beings by putting a sperm from their planet X there. And then one of their gods, Enki, the son of man, had sex with the 2 daughters of Eve, creating Homo sapiens sapiens. Now, I will hold fast to that until somebody can come up to me and disprove the National Geographic DNA study or the ancient texts. So when we go back now to North and South America, and the fact that we came from beings from the heavens and the mountains of Peru, and that was populated from south to north. And that's where my Vatican, who I am not happy with, sent their assassins and colored them, of course, as very brave explorers. But as we just heard, the result was genocide, purposeful murder to get the gold, because when Planet X's moon hit us, the collision damaged their atmosphere. And so the thing that does repair atmospheres, because they live inside their planet, when they travel between our sun and Sirius A, very sacred star for the ancient Egyptians. They go in an elliptical orbit around their Sirius A and our sun. They live inside the planet. The volcanoes keep the atmosphere. The atmosphere keeps the volcanic heat inside the planet, and that's been damaged. So they sent 50 Argonauts in the Greek legend of the Golden Fleece. No, they sent the 50 Argonauts, including the Son of Man, to the earth to do what? To fleece the earth of its gold. And hasn't been that the history the whole time? So now when we see the breaking up of, or the proposed breaking up or imminent breaking up of let's say the United States, which is a corporation, that's a longer story than we have time for here, established there in 1870 after the Civil War, when we begin to see the trauma created by the central bank in 1913 by private bankers in London controlled by the Vatican Bank.
Mm-hmm.
People now are waking up to that control mechanism of massive debt. The credit cards are running out, etc. The UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, which has been ratified in Canada, which has been entrenched into our Constitution on the consent of Canada at the UN May 10th of 2016, and has now been confirmed by a judge in Montreal, and just in the fall, in November of 2023, the Montour case. We begin to see hope that Canada is going to manifest its destiny, and that is, as the richest country in the world, $700 trillion is the value of our resources. That's why Toronto has the most headquarters of mining companies from around the world in one city, like number 75, to fool us, to steal our minerals, to give us nothing in return, but more debt and poverty, etc. Canada now is in a position to actually create a new financial system, which is called TUMULT, the Mother Lode Trust, TUMULT.ca, because the Supreme Court confirmed in the Haida decisions, the BC case, Haida versus BC, paragraph 32, this crown thing for the Canadians, the whole time we've been a country, have been, well, we're just British subjects. I'm not sure why you would want to be a subject of a murderous enterprise like the Crown coming out of London, England, has murdered hundreds of millions of people. In the United States alone, I guess including Canada, the population was 100 million plus. And no question, they were just murdered. A lot of them by President George Washington. He gave the order to go over from the 13 colonies on the east. There was indigenous land, north and south, from Montreal down to Louisiana. That was all called Indian country. It's on the Britannica maps of 1763. And then west of that was Ohio. And George Washington ordered his generals to murder the Iroquois in Ohio. So they ran a course up toward Montreal to the southern part of Ontario, running for their lives. Most were wiped out. And then they proceeded to go in tandem with the Crown of England and take over the Western territories, culminating, of course, in the Oregon Treaty in the 1870s so 1850s, and they just divided. BC became British, and Washington, Oregon became American properties. The Indigenous didn't sign the treaty. Beaubois' ancestors in particular, and the Coast Salish did not sign those treaties. They're not valid. And this is important to the breakup, Alfred, and I'll pass it back now because North Dakota is the one state in the Union of the United States that has the public bank, which in 1917, they gave the royal finger to the Rockefeller Chase Bank in New York, saying you're nothing but a bunch of crooks, and we will maintain our farms here, our own financial system. And the North Dakota Public Bank has never had a recession. I 4 times went through the recessions in the last 20, 30 years as a builder. Every 7 years, like clockwork, the market collapsed for houses. I lost everything. Start again, lose it again 7 years later, etc. No recession in North Dakota. And those western 4 states in the northwest corner of the United States, and if they don't knock it off in New York, we're going to separate. Now we've got the Northwest going, we've got Texas and Florida going, and the Northwest 6 states have already, this is 10, 15 years ago, have their own coin even. It's called an amero that they're going to issue. And so this whole thing that's happening now is because it's urgent because the Saudi Arabians now, the royal family, who are not Muslims, they are Khazarians from Mongolia, masquerading under the robes of a Muslim empire, a murderous group with the Venetian families, with the families that are in Montreal. I learned last Sunday from a top international banker, and that's where the operations are for North America. If they don't bust it up, in North America, we'll have to do it on our own. But Saudi Arabia now, on January 1 of this year, they've joined the BRICS nations. Of those 5 nations who have their own currency, they're trading oil now, not in US dollars, but in those BRICS nations' currencies. This is a godsend. I'm here to tell you, as a historian of modern European history, that this is a communist enterprise. These are murderous thugs posing as international diplomats. And the proof is at the miracle at Fatima in 1917, on October 13, the miracle of the sun, where the 3rd secret was given to those children that if John Paul II in the 1980s was going to be shot, she said, that's the 3rd secret. And sure enough, of course, he was shot by the Serbian assassin, or would-be assassin, that if he didn't consecrate the world to her, the woman who appeared at Fatima, that communism that she predicted in 1917 would come the next month and would last 70 years till 1989, right? When the Iron Curtain fell. If Pope John Paul II did not consecrate the world to her, communism would go underground, where it now is coming up through the Pentagon in Washington. So that consecration should have been to the creatrix of human beings called Ninmah from Planet X. You know her as Mary the Magdalene, which is her Greek royal title, the Great One, who knew all, who fashioned Adam and Eve, with great intergalactic capabilities that's just coming up now because Earth now is in alignment through the sun with the central sun of our solar system. And that is all kept all over the world, Alfred, by the hereditary, called them grandmothers or clan mothers, in a global hand-holding basket of knowledge. Back to you.
You're muted, Alfred.
Yes, bravo. I just have one question just to be reminded of it. What was the date, you mentioned it earlier, of the holy woman who actually started the human race? What was that date?
The date was 200,000 BC, you mean? The changing of the bonobo ovum. They took the woman took an egg from likely a bonobo ape, because the bonobo apes will have sex with their brothers and sisters. They'll have sex with their children. It's kind of a loving group of people, I guess. Depends on your morals as an ape. But, but, but that's what they chose to have. And I mean, look at our behavior today across the planet. I mean, we're so screwed up. Let's just admit it, you know, in our, whatever the hell you want to call it, sexual mores or conduct. So that was the date was 200,000 BC in the ancient texts. And that's when I fell out of the chair at the Museum of Archaeology at UPenn, one of the top schools in the world. And the DNA from Spencer Wells's book called Deep Ancestry proved that this all started. We're very young on the planet at 200,000, except, Alfred, that the black-headed people whose kingdom was centered in the Grand Canyon. And that's why you're not allowed to fly in there, right? That's a no-fly zone. Most people don't realize that. Forget about the Pentagon and 9/11 being a no-fly zone. You're not allowed to fly into the Grand Canyon, period, because the Temple of Isis, twice as high as the Giza Pyramid, is there. And the assault then came from Tigris-Euphrates, the clash against the black-headed people of the Western Hemisphere. And those people from Tigris-Euphrates who are not Semitic, brown-skinned people, the white-skinned people coming in mostly through Norway from Mars, called the Igigi or the Igigi, all that white-black clash is now being flushed up in the fabulous ability to people to have YouTubes like this. And it's all there. I can tell you as a scholar of history, it's all there. It's a fascinating ride. Who was Jesus Christ, the Son of Man? Who was Yahweh, his half-brother, who was here to get the military? Who had sex with the daughters of Eve to create Homo sapiens sapiens? You can come to your own conclusion. But I can tell you as a Catholic, the Vatican has lied, and what is in that library is our property from all 8 billion of people across the world, and that library must be opened. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to turn now to John Sapola, Sesapi Mukwa. Over to you.
Zesapi. Wow, Glenn.
That's the Italian version of his indigenous name.
Well, tough to keep up with Glenn. Oh my God, I love listening to Glenn and when he talks about this stuff. So, in terms of the regions, I think at one point in time, first they talked about breaking up into 7 regions and then 9. And I think that has a lot to do with numerology, spiritual. So 7 is right, is spirituality. 9 is like royalty. And so I agree with what Judge Alfred was saying at the start, is that if Trump becomes president again, things will stay solid and solidified. There probably won't be this separation. On the other hand, if it goes the other way, then that's where these 9 regions could become a reality. But at the rate things are going right now, I'm gonna put my I'm gonna bet on the Donald, and that the solidification of is going to maintain itself, because it seems like wherever you go, that whether or not people like Donald Trump as a person, as a leader, they like him all over the world. And just like the president from El Salvador, I forget his name, El Salvador, the young new president there that was asked to speak at the United Nations, and he simply stood up and told it was Glenn, do you remember his name? His name's escaping me at the moment.
Are you
So-
speaking of the new Argentinian president?
No.
No, it's El Salvador, little country, El Salvador, Central America. But
I'm not familiar with the new.
so he's the one, if I'm not mistaken, that stood up at the United Nations and basically told them off at the United Nations. And people are looking for leaders like that. What it is really simply a conscious leader, somebody who is awake and wants to do the right thing spiritually for their nation. And so if these leaders keep rising up, like the leader of El Salvador and Donald Trump, I don't foresee the world breaking into 9 different regions. However, it's all dependent on what's going to happen here in the very near future, and we're talking very near. We've got end of June coming up in the end of June, so July, August, September. We got 4 months, and some major things are about to happen. As most of us know, Saudi Arabia just came off the U.S. dollar. Turkey came off the U.S. dollar. And so this is going to have a major impact on what happens in these regions around the world. So I'm just being optimistic at this point, and let's see what happens. But I believe the light is overcoming the darkness very quickly now, and that it's accelerating on a daily basis. And so I'm banking on the people staying solidified and together as one.
Could I ask you some questions just to that tie into
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Uh,
If I
Are
can
you
answer them.
familiar either in yourself or in nations that are part of the Alliance of Indigenous Nations that Spirit Warrior was mentioning earlier, the eagle and condor prophecy? Are you aware of any indigenous prophecies for this time that relate to Turtle Island, i.e. Canada, the US, Central America, South America, the Caribbean? What are the indigenous prophecies saying? I know that there are some indigenous nations that I'm aware of, and we'll wait for Bobois to testify, that say that are seeking jurisdiction over Turtle Island.
Well, Judge Alfred, there's many indigenous prophecies. The one I'm familiar with is the eagle and the condor, and that's not just one that's many nations. The prophecy for many ancient nations. But what you're saying is true. Yes, the original peoples are coming back to reclaim their land, resources, and freedom. It's theirs. It was always theirs. They were the stewards, and they're going to come back and they're going to steward the land and preserve it and protect it for future generations to come. That's where we're going.
Could you articulate more specifically about that and how that's going to affect the jurisdiction of Canada, the government of Canada, the jurisdiction of the United States of America Constitution, the jurisdiction of the Central American nations, the jurisdiction of the Caribbean nations, etc. What do you think happened?
That's that.
The public inquiry is that I was given a message by Stanford Research Institute in 1971, who was doing a 50-year study for the CIA that was 30 years ago, makes it now. So in the next 20 years, they're saying that the US is going to be divided into a number of regions. So what we're trying to do now is going to see, are we having a constitutional disassembly, both of the constitutional USA and perhaps of Canada? There's an election coming up in Canada in 2025. We don't know if that's going to go to the Conservatives, if that's going to go to the Liberals. There's all sorts of flux. There's a lot of different ideas. There's at least one province, Quebec, another Alberta, that's talking about, I don't know, sovereignty. So how does this relate to the Indigenous nations and traditions that are also seeking their sovereignty? Over to you.
Let me interject for a minute, John, because what we realized recently, Alfred, in our research in the courts of Canada, that the Montour case, R.V. Montour, in November in Montreal, the very brave Justice Sophie Bork held Canada to its consent at the UN, as I said, to do what? To entrench the UNDRIP, the UN Declaration of Indigenous Rights, into the Constitution. Section 35 of Canada is the Constitution proper. The Charter of Rights, they can override you at the convoy in Ottawa. That ends at Section 34. So we've really kind of taken over the Constitution and made it of the people, because our Indigenous tribunals at Article 5, 27, 34, and 40 are now entrenched in the Constitution of Canada. And Peter Hogg, the most famous constitutional scholar, the late Peter Hogg, H-O-G-G, had asserted that the Supreme Court of Canada in Ottawa is not entrenched in the Constitution. So it is now an Indigenous constitution of the people in Canada, once we realize everybody born here is Indigenous. Go to Philadelphia, and Lenape have taught us that there is no treaty between George Washington and the Indigenous people. They forced their way onto the land. They made up some fictional story of Ben Franklin being under a tree. I don't know if it was who he was with at the time, but it was not Lenape. Okay, so the Micmac of New Brunswick, the Micmac, M-A-C-K, those are the people, and their treaty is in Boston in the museum. They gave permission for Washington to come onto the lands of the East Coast, provided they behave themselves. And of course, they have not. So there are real questions about the validity of the United States Constitution. And the people can now turn to the UNDRIP UN Declaration. You don't have to belong to the UN. It's a great organization, except it's been hijacked by the Khazarians. And so the counterweight that we've done, and largely because of John Trapola's immense work he's done around the world nonstop to begin to create the alt-UN of individual sovereignty, where everybody gets a trust fund that can never, ever be taken away. Go.
Right. So does that mean that classical nation states like the United States of America, which is a constitutional body, and the Republic of Canada are probably in the middle of disassembly as we speak?
Well, I would say it's a consent issue, right? Because really what the Supreme Court of Canada and SCOTUS is, the Supreme Court of the United States, they are corporate bodies governing the decisions of Canada Corp, which is registered on the SEC in Washington. We have this evidence in the courts of Canada, the Superior Court of Ontario and the Court of Appeal, right? The US Inc., they are governing bodies, as if you're shopping at Costco and you've got a problem with the pricing, or an employee, you can go to the Supreme Court of the United States or Supreme Court of Canada in that corporate environment. But now you can go as an individual, unconquered man or woman, because the British never conquered the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. Supreme Court of Canada, 2 decisions in Chocolatine 25 and in Des Hotels, paragraph 30. They never conquered us. You've got to consent to go into the Costco system, corporate system, or now you can go into an Indigenous tribunal of the Salmon people, of the Asminti people, our Asmin Nation, the Eastern Métis, or you can go into the AIN International Tribunal. So now you as the sovereign individual have the right to go in to assert your birthright to those minerals of the land that you were born in. A crazy mixed up ratio. If you're born in Berlin, you don't say you're Spanish or French. If you're born on Turtle Island, you are indigenous to Turtle Island. Your parents might have come from the moon or from Mars. Likely some of them did, way back in the day. But if you're born here, you have the absolute right to say you're a sovereign, unconquered man or woman. You own the minerals, and you have the right under Articles 5, 20, 26, and 36 of UNDRIP to do what? To form your own financial system. So let's grow up and let's get our own financial system away from the murderous, warlike, as Sherry said, central banker Khazarians who are, about to wipe out Gaza as the latest event of massive genocide globally. The British Empire, guilty of murder, rape, theft, lying. They haven't left much out of the criminal code, I'll tell you that. And yet they're in charge of prosecuting us, the innocent people.
Well, so what is this canard called anti-Semitism? And how does that relate to, that's not a defense against war crimes?
Anti-Semitism is impossible because the children of Abraham, right, the Jews, Christians, and Muslims, are all related. Abraham was brought from the Tigris Euphrates, right? His father, Taraz, T-E-R-A-Z, he worshipped Nanar Sin, the Anunnaki godhead. And yet the military commander Enlil, who's here to get the gold, and that's about it, from the monkeys, right? The human beings who were formed to go into the mountains of South Africa and Peru to get the gold. That's what we're designed to do. He led or bribed Abraham with what? Land, right, around the world, and heritage around the world. If you just come with me and do what? Come into Jerusalem, which the original name was Ariel. Think Little Mermaid, because Disney knew this. Somebody at Disney knew this. That the original name of the of Salem was Ariel. She will come there dressed as a bride. And that is Ninmah, known as Ninkarsag, known as Isis, known as Athena in Greece, known as Nugua, N-U-G-U-A in China. She founded China, 5000 BC. This is all the same woman. It's just broken up by the languages. So there's no anti-Semitism, a complete fabrication, okay, to destroy the Palestinian people. That's their homeland. And Balfour Declaration, Lord Balfour had no business bringing settlers from all over where the hell they came from. Because the Jews came from Mongolia. And Genghis Khan, who got fed up with the crap, kicked their butts all the way to Poland, to Warsaw. And then they managed to convince the people of the world that they belong, somehow they belong in the Palestinian homeland, where they were wiped out initially, 700,000 Palestinians just after 1945, 1948. They were wiped out, 700,000, and now they're taking the rest of it, the Khazarians. So let's get it's the Semites versus the Khazarians, or the Khazarians posing as Semites in sheep's clothing. Go.
Right, thank you. Okay, so now we have synchronistically landed, and he has his hand up. Bobois and the people of the Salmon, over to you.
Okay, thank you. And thanks. I've listened to all of this, religious speak on who is here first and who is here second. If I was to bring it down to basic principles, is that when man was created, we were all gods unto ourselves. And then secondly, when God created a priest, you invented capitalism, and it become under corpus juris secunda because it wasn't the first law of the land, it was the second. And so if we go into which is the closest treaty, international treaty that I know peoples of North America have signed with others around the world, is the Eye of Camels Treaty. And with that treaty, we signed on with all the colors of the world, the rainbow prophecies. And so when we say that we follow it letter perfect to the law today, all the corporations fall under that treaty, corpus juris secunda, because we are the first law of the land. We are the sovereign law on this land. And you need to talk to or listen to people like Meredith Quinn, Lester House, and I'm happy to be recorded in the same name as those two gentlemen, because they set the stages for sovereign law on this land. And from sovereign law comes these constitutions, these other documents that we talked about, the UNDRIP, the corporation documents from the UN, and the rights of Indigenous people. They're just international law. They're identified in international treaty. And that's what Meredith Quinn said. So this international law comes to our people of Turtle Island, all the nations that are recognized, the West Coast, and I did mention the Hokulea, the Sialk, the Blackfoot, and then the Sioux, the Dakotas, and then into back east. So when you talk about 408 AD and a treaty that we already have, that is the law of the land, and we are the law of the land. So anything that says contrary to that, and even in the courts now, is that if you go back to 1704 is probably the earliest proclamation for the imperial orders, is that the Indians cannot be dispossessed of the lands. And that is English imperial law that protects the inhabitants of this Turtle Island, because we don't sign anything, we haven't signed anything else besides that. In North America, there is no monarchy signature on this land. So when we signed the treaty amongst the colored nations of this world, it is still followed letter perfect to the day. So what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about history of religion, or are you going to talk about the treaties that all of the original people signed of this world? Of Turtle Island was the whole world at one time. So when I want to say that the 9 regions of Turtle Island, the kingdom of our people, will be intact, and is still intact today. And I go back to a court decision that was made May 2nd by one of our Luke, J.D. Anderson. I put it into court. However, what I see coming from that court, because we're still waiting for the transcript 4 months later, or 4 weeks later, is similar to a federal court case that our friend Hamjidis did in the federal court, identifying that there is no Indian Act. And anybody that says that there is an Indian Act is committing fraud and or just making a downright deceitful statement. And this, I think he's one of the highest ranking federal court justices, Crampton, said, well, you used it already, we're going to leave it in place. Because he didn't bring to the court from October 25th, when he was told that there is no Indian Act, there is no laws of general application on this land, the land still belonged to our people. And so when that judge refused to bring the third reading, the royal assent, and the Gazette recording copy of the Indian Act on this land that divided us into reservations, into Indian status and non-status and off-reserve Indians, that is nonsense. So our people, by resurrecting and reestablishing pages between 4 and 8 of the Camel's Eye Treaty, reestablish our government. The government of Canada is in a conflict of interest to our people. And so if the U.S. government, U.S. Inc., is in default of these treaties, and Canada has no treaty with the Indians because they're in a conflict of interest with us, reestablishing the matriarchal clan mothers. I'm supposed to be meeting with them here now. And the Haida said no to their contract, their agreement. They're going to stand on their own land. The Gitxsan and their hereditary people own their land too. The Tsimshian, my friend is sick today, so he's not here today, and that's Henry Green. All these people now are the title holders of those lands. And so as we move forward across Kinatin, that's one region we want to make it Kinatin, because we all stand on our own belief that we are the first law of the land, the first and right to a tribunal, because the courts here are third-party courts. There's no court in North America. Oh yeah, there's Supreme Court, there's all these other courts, but when it comes down to it, all they are is Hudson's Bay courts, Hudson's Bay remnants of the Hudson's Bay Company, where they set up the courts, they set up the judge and jury, just like in BC was Bailey Begbie, and he actually murdered 5 of our headsmen in the Jacotin. Didn't say nothing, went back to Victoria and set up a government without our people. That's not right. Never did stand. So BC never did a treaty with our people, never purchased the lands like they were supposed to under the proclamations. So there is no law here for them. It's our law. And so when you say, can those 9 regions of North America be brought under the clan mothers? Yes. And under the first law of the land? Yes. And we stand under sovereign indigenous law, not corpus juris secundum statute, act, and regulations. No, that's not going to happen today. Anybody that thinks that can happen, not going to happen. Thank you.
May I follow up, Judge Alfred, with what Beaubois has to say?
Please, please.
So, concurring with Beaubois, as we've been working with all these nations from around the world, as I was saying earlier, just about every nation is claiming now that their constitution is fraudulent. Okay, not just Canada. Australia's claiming the same thing. New Zealand's claiming the same thing. And let's pretend for a minute that Canada's BNA Act was valid, even though most of us that have done our research know that it's not valid. But pretending it was valid for a moment, just like Beaubois was saying, even if you go and look at one of the earliest cases in Canada, it's a case called Conley v. Woolworth, and it was decided in July of 1867, approximately the same time of the BNA Act, the alleged BNA Act. This is important because of what Beaubois just said. Even if you looked at that case, which I'm sure they forgot to bury it with the rest of the cases that got buried that show the proof and the truth that the original peoples and the original law is still presumed to continue. That case says unambiguously that Indigenous common law continues, not even modified in the slightest. That's what the judge held. In other words, what the original people didn't give to the Hudson Bay Corporation, and by the way, if you read the case thoroughly, they're going to talk about the Hudson Bay Corporation. It was merely a corporation that came over to the landmass known as Canada, and they were given some privileges by the original people. And what the original people didn't give to that corporation, they don't have. That corporation doesn't have. And therefore, they cannot give anything that they didn't have in the first place. So, whose laws are we under today? I agree with Beaubois. If you follow the history and have done the deep dive that most of us on the call have, you're going to find it was the Hudson Bay Corporation, now Canada Corporation, and they've imposed their laws, rules, codes, regulations, and sorry, not their laws, their codes, rules, regulations, statutes, and acts upon all of us. And as the settlers came over, they expanded and expanded, i.e. they trespassed, illegally occupied the lands belonging to the original people. And that's crystal clear. You just take a look at some of these older cases. They forgot a lot of these cases, the de facto government, they'll bury these cases. Same thing in America, they'll get buried. But oftentimes they forget to hide all their tracks And this is just one that's a glaringly obvious for us to see and with our own eyes what exactly happened. Now, touching on that, you're going to see also that because we're meeting lots of sovereign hereditary chiefs are stepping up, some of these chiefs have the actual or the original treaties, like the Watertown Treaty of Peace and these other treaties that pre-existed the Constitution for the small United States of America. And as Glenn was alluding to earlier, some of these things may be frauds as well. Some of these ones that we think are actually legit may be fraudulent as well. And so there's some deep dives going on there as well. Now, in the landmass known as Canada, we have something very interesting happening. We have former Crown prosecutor in Northern Ontario by the name of Pierre Rousseau stepping up and explaining how the Indigenous system is the system that works, the Indigenous restorative system. You have Janice Switlow speaking out very loudly. It's very important to know what her title was. She was in-house counsel for the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs Canada. So she's an insider who's now speaking up and calling the fraud of Canada Corporation. She's explaining allodial title and that the Crown cannot give anything it was never given in the first place from the original people because the original people have allodial title. And anything that the Crown gave was fraudulent. Okay. In addition to those two, you now have a retired judge from Alberta, the youngest judge ever appointed to the criminal court bench in Alberta, Judge John Riley, now retired, wrote 3 books. One of them's a bestseller. And he's also done a TEDx talk. He is coming out. He was asked, and if you read I recommend his book for everyone. At least the one that I read is Bad Law, and I recommend that everybody read this book. He's asked, when will there be an Indigenous restorative system to run parallel with the penal colonial system? He says that's not the question. The question is, when will the restorative community-based system replace the failing colonial penal system that never, ever worked? And I point these 3 things out because these are 3 of their own people, 3 of the establishment's own people that are now stepping up and speaking out about this in Canada. We're also finding out Canada has wanted us to believe for a very long time that certain nations are extinguished or no longer exist. It's not true. The Bayo effect, they wanted us to believe, it's even in, I think, some of their Supreme Court of Canada case law, that they're extinct. They're not extinct, as we're finding out. And they do still exist. Same thing with the Amiqua Nation. Michael Swinwood's working very closely with the Amiqua Nation, and Stacy McQuabe and Corey Pierce. They want us to believe they don't exist because the de facto governments fraudulently changed names. So people couldn't follow their names, the true meaning of their names. They changed the names of lakes and territories and all sorts of frauds committed by the Crown. So now we know that these nations that the Crown wanted us to believe are extinct are really still in existence. Bringing us now currently to UNDRIP. UNDRIP, people are getting all worked up over UNDRIP. And yes, we know that UNDRIP can be used in a negative fashion, but it's important to talk about UNDRIP because you first need to distinguish between the sovereign hereditary nations and the banded corporate nations that have sold out their birthright in exchange for mere privileges and immunities and some money. And that's a huge distinction. Why? Because the sovereign hereditary chiefs were never, ever going to give up their birthright when it belongs to all of them. Every bit of it, all the land, all the resources. So why would they ever give that up? They were not foolish enough to do that, and therefore they didn't. And that's what Janice Switlow and John Riley and the rest of them are talking about. Going further into UNDRIP, we have to remember that when the crown or the de facto governments make up rules, well, if it's their rules, we can use their rules against them. All UNDRIP does, in my opinion, it merely restates the original people's inherent sovereignty that always existed. Whether you look at the Royal Proclamation of 1763 or Beaubois's Queen Anne's Imperial Order, or if you even want to just go back to this case, Connolly v. Woolworth from July of 1867, the time of the alleged B&A Act that allegedly created the three branches of government. And if it wasn't a valid act, the three branches of government in Canada Corporation do not exist: the judicial, legislative, and executive. So think about that for a moment. So it goes back to what Beaubois was saying. We fall back then, if this illegitimate thing called Canada Corporation doesn't exist, which we know it doesn't, then what's left? And all that's left is the original peoples. Now, I need to emphasize this. The original peoples are working on behalf of all people of Mother Earth. So a lot of people get worried and concerned about that. The original people are working on behalf of all people on Mother Earth, not just the original people. So I just wanted to point that out. And then lastly, your question was like, how do I see the jurisdictions and all that forming as a result of all that's happening globally right now? And it's a tough question to answer, and maybe I've become really idealistic, but what I see happening is as the indigenous restorative system starts to replace the colonial penal system, what's going to happen is when you have true justice, true restoration, it's only a matter of time where people are going to look and they're going to go, okay, I can be a part of this that's blossoming, that's fruitful, that people are getting well, that people are really healing, where the food's natural, the air's clean. God forbid we can actually swim in the water again. It's not polluted. And they're going to look around and they go, we can actually have some money in our pocket and some time and health to enjoy it. What's going to naturally and organically happen is this old system is just going to disintegrate on itself. Nobody's ever going to look back at that system. Because and the other thing to remember is when people are happy, healthy, and have the time, the money to enjoy it, and can be with their family and their friends and their loved ones, there isn't going to be crime. There isn't going to be mental illness. There isn't going to be all this sickness and disease. That stuff's going to be eliminated. That is all a result, in my opinion, of the dysfunctional system that's been imposed on us for these thousands and thousands of years. Once that is eliminated, all this thing that we know is hardship, challenges, difficulties, it's all going to be eliminated. It's all just going to disintegrate. Bad health challenges, disease, premature death, disability, all these things, barring accidents and things like that. So that's the best way I can answer the jurisdiction challenge. We're all going to be governing ourselves, i.e. self-governing. We're all sovereign, and no man or woman who is going to have jurisdiction over another man or woman unless somebody intentionally harmed another man or woman or intentionally harmed their property. And that's the way it always was supposed to be. That's law versus all these code rules, regulations, and statutes. That's the way I see it. That's the lens that I see it through.
Thank you very much, John. Now, Sherry hasn't presented yet, and so I'm going to recognize her for presenting. Spirit Warrior, did you have a quick question?
All right.
You're on mute.
Yeah, just a very quick assertion. I'm really looking forward to Sherry's presentation, but on John's law point, the audience should just Google the Supreme Court of Canada, RV Desautel, Desautel, 2021 decision. Go to paragraph 68, and they talk about British imperial law. And they state that Indigenous common law of Bobois, let's say, is presumed to continue here. And if you Google Brian Donovan 2003 common law origins of our law, go to footnote 13, international law since 1774, acts passed in London, England are only valid overseas of a conquered people. But De Sautel at 30 says we are not conquered. So folks, either you're going to consent to the British murdering system, or you're going to assert your own sovereign common law that Bobois so well described. Go.
Okay, thank you very much, Spirit Warrior. Okay, Sherry, you're up next, and thank you for your patience. I'd like to just bring something in from the point of view of the chair, and then we'll go to you. And what I'd like to do is advise all of the participants who are leaders in Turtle Island Indigenous nations that on behalf of the tribunal, we'll be inviting each of the four of you, and I'm putting this, to be attendees at the first International Earth Conference on Extraterrestrial Genocide and Successful and Mutually Advantageous Planetary Rescue, Positive Alliance and Integration with Homo Martis Terris. They are the human Martian civilization, and it's all set out there. We're in the process of arranging an international conference to ally the positive human civilization with a positive Martian civilization. We have the information that there are about 1 million Homo Martis Terris, or human Martian civilizations members. There are genetic cousins. They're a bit more advanced than Earthling humans and a bit more ethical, living under the surface of Mars. And that's a conference, and I'll be sending each of you invitations, and the terms of the invitation will be there, number one. Secondly, once we have Sherry's presentation, what I'd like to propose, and discussion, what I'd like to propose to the group here, our tribunal, is that this group of leaders of the Turtle Island Indigenous nations propose and organize an international conference on precisely on the issues that, for example, John Sapola, Spirit Warrior, and Bobois have just been speaking about, how this new awakening of the Indigenous nations and the existing institutions of the matrix, just for the lack of it, just bringing that awareness so that we can begin to invite to this conference world leaders in many different cultural fabrics, so that you can present these issues, and this conference can talk to these issues. This will be a virtual conference. You'll be, our tribunal will co-organize it with you. You can, develop the agenda with you. but so that these important issues now are going to begin to be discussed at the world leader level. What I mean by leader is at multiple levels. It doesn't mean president, it means all the leaders that we can think of. And after Cherie LePage is finished presenting, we have a discussion. I'd like to open up a discussion here about the organizing of such a conference. You can go to the link of the Homo Martis Terris conference, and it would be a similar type of conference, but directed toward the issues of the now awakening planetary Aboriginal awakening. Okay, so with that said, over to you, Cherie LePage.
Thank you, Alfred. I now know why I've been invited, and I'm starting to comprehend how the boy sees me, as I am a Hassa, a healer. And as we begin to realize the levels and we become awakened to the levels of betrayal upon from the corporation agendas and the greed of the Vatican and all of these things that would have come upon the peoples, that as we awaken to this, restorative measures need to be placed. And I'm so grateful that I got to hear Spirit Warrior and Zizaki. Sorry, John.
No worries.
Zesapi.
Thank
Right?
you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Means
I
laughing
really-
with tears, by the way. It means laughing with tears. And that
Okay.
came from my Grand Chief.
Thank you. I still am looking forward to hearing and finding that Indigenous name for myself one day. But what I really realize is that along with this awakening and the realization of the betrayals comes a sense of trauma inside the body. It creates trauma in each of us on some layers. And as the law states, that's one direction that we have to hold strong. The warriors hold strong. And we need, as the clan mothers, to come together and the healers to come together and hold that space for the law to come through. Without this holding of space for this, from this healing sense, to support the warriors' work, the lawyers' work, we this is part of the energy that's building to make this happen. Not to make it happen, it's already happening. But it's like it's all one. We have to work together in all this, complete the circle of the energy behind this. And so one of the things that I would really encourage, if you're having workshops like this, if there are people gathering workshops, that part of it is to bring in the prayer, part of it is to bring in the grounding, part of it is to recognize the spirits inside of us. And that we are, like, when you talk about some of these things and the truths that are coming forward, and my whole body is covered in goosebumps, it's like for the first time I've heard truths being said. And so the more people that awaken and learn about these betrayals and the restorative measures that can be there to support them through breaking through that, the faster and easier it'll all come for everybody. And I'm particularly concerned at this first stage of incorporating the corporate Indigenous band councils into this realization of where they're at and where they're sitting, and to support them first above, and get them, help them realize where they're at, help them come on board, help all of us, but especially them. Yeah, Guatemala.
Thank you. Okay, so Boboi's Spirit Warrior Sasapi, John, would you like to comment or dialogue with what Sherry LePage has introduced?
Like a closing remark, from me, what I would say is, Sherry's absolutely right. It's all the people need to continue to come together. We cannot be duped by Ukraine-Russia wars, Palestine, Israeli wars, these things. This is just more of the same old divide and conquer the people. It is up to us to be wise enough to see through this fraud and stick together, Black, white, Hispanic, Muslim, Christian, or Jew, liberal, Democrat, whatever, that we must stick together as mankind, govern ourselves accordingly, and keep working together, sharing information, and that's how we're going to co-create this new world, this new Mother Earth, and have the Garden of Eden that we always hear about. We're going to manifest it together. That's the way it's going to happen. The people have to do it, and we can't. If others come along that can help us, great, but it's up to us, the people, to do it. And I'm talking about the leaders, the Trumps and whatever, great. But it's up to the people. We have to do it. We have to take charge and govern ourselves accordingly. So yeah, in closing, that's all that I would like to say. And if you see people coming along and they're dividing your group or groups that you're aware of in any way, shape, or form, just be vigilant, because anybody that's coming from truly the right place will not be trying to divide people at a time like this.
Mhm.
Miigwech.
Thank you. Spirit Warrior, yes, would you like to engage with the ideas that Sherry has brought forward?
She's brought forward the critical realization for those who are not educated yet that the banned corporate chiefs have gone the way they've gone, taking currency from the central bank. They are different. The corporate bans on reserves are different. They're surrendered and different than the sovereign elders who are unconquered in the Des Sautel landmark decision that takes us back to 1774. And if people do their history research, the Articles of Confederation number 1, which was in 1777 in Philadelphia, Article 11 says that Canada acceded to become what? The 14th, you never hear about this, you hear about 13 colonies, the 14th sovereign state in perpetuity, and that if you don't consent to the colonial empire, then you retain your unconquered status. Everyone should keep in mind that the US Constitution, okay, relies on the Watertown Treaty of the Micmac, as John said, in the Boston Museum. And the corporate government of the United States has breached that treaty. Number 2, the Canada Act of 1982, the British North America Act of 1867, and the Hudson's Bay Charter of 1670, okay, are all passed in London, England. They are not, and lawyers don't know this, Alfred. We've talked to lawyers, they had no clue where their own Canada Act is passed. And the Donovan article at footnote 13 states proclamations of Queen Elizabeth in March, April of 1982, on the lawn of Parliament that's on unceded land of the Anishinaabe people, those proclamations are not valid overseas. Let's start there and get ourselves back toward individual sovereignty and real wealth that John spoke about.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Boys, you're on mute, but do you have any observations or input that on behalf of the people of the Salmon or yourself that goes to what Sherry has brought forth?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Inclusivity, peoples of the Salmon, the Alliance of an international recognized sovereign country. And in saying that, the colonialist, I guess he's the actor that's in charge of Canada. And I mentioned, May 2nd, is that been waiting for a document to come from the court, is that the court, the king, and all the actors are all part of that same stage. And for us to understand that we could reestablish our governance structure, our sovereignty, is how the process is what people don't understand is what do you do when you're reestablishing your government? You make in commerce, you make a certificate of approval. You prove that in their fraud is that they removed their prime minister, the president, chairman of the board of the Liberal government, and we go about removing it. And inclusivity means who is going to join us when we get to the international forum, and all these people that all the countries that have Indigenous families and a culture all are lined up to join us. As much as they they haven't come and knocked on my door and wanting to join us, they've expressed to other entities in our banking. There's probably over a dozen central banks that want to join us in our own sovereign banking. There's at least a dozen countries that want to join us in a sovereign country. We're not talking UN, we're not talking UNDRIP, we're not talking corporations. We're talking about sovereign nations that will join us in banking in our own sovereign way. And so inclusivity means these people that want to walk on the land again and walk with us with a flag. You've seen my flag. The flag of unity. Everybody can join us in commerce under that flag, because that's what it is. It gives us the right to travel over the sea with trade, peace, trade, and good governance. And that's what's inclusivity. All these other, nonsenses about, Trump and I'm going to do this, and Ukraine is money laundering. Trudeau is money laundering. We're not interested in those games. And in fact, we have actually shut down those doors to those games that have been played. So when we talk about real situation, real people, they join us on this land with our hereditary. And, and there's that question I tried to answer last time I heard this, white rights. And until I think that understanding is that the tribal people, the hereditary council that we have instituted, is the right of the whites to be on this land with us. And that's inclusivity. That becomes people walking together on the land under a reestablished governance of our people. Well enough.
thank you. Thank you very much for those insights and words. Okay, We're now at the
What
1
said
hour and
Dave?
44-minute interlude, which I think is, extraordinary. It's about at the limit that people can really absorb. And so I think we're at the limit. We're at the end of our of this extraordinary session, which I think is historically a very important one. And I'd like to go around for some final words. And before I do that, I would like to come by with this summary and proposal of an initiative and get everyone's thoughts and hopefully approval. There are two outcomes today. One is the outcome of an important video, which will come out of this, which will be distributed widely and add to understanding of this issue and motivation, and really elevate understanding and hopefully action in this area. And that's to be expected, number one. And the second, which I'd like to propose as an initiative, which really came out of this and which developed in my own mind as we went through this. I did not have it in mind when we started this, but it was born out of the inspiration which I felt as we all went through this, and from all of your inputs, which were extraordinary. I learned an extraordinary amount today. And that is that I would like to, as I mentioned, propose, I don't have the exact terms, but an international conference on indigenous national awareness and sovereignty, rebirth, plus, I don't know, we can come up with some language. I'd like to be able to write out maybe a page in Word or page and a half, and send it around to the 4 participants here for your comments and etc. And then once we have those comments, just to gather and give it an approval, and then just to launch it. And you'll see the technology that we're doing on the first International Earth Conference on extraterrestrial genocide in a positive alliance with Homo Martis Terris. And that is that we have it on the tribunal website. And what we're doing now is that we're developing lists of conference participants, which we email. It's a virtual conference. We don't have the date yet, but the conference organizers, which I'm doing in conjunction with Mars visitors, people who've actually been on Mars, people who have actually interacted with Homo Martis Terris, with the Martian civilization at top secret US bases, both on Earth and on Mars. And we're reaching out to various invitees. And once we have enough invitees, then we'll email them a date and a link. This is a virtual link, and we'll have it in a link, and then we have a conference agenda, etc. And I believe that a similar thing can very beneficially be done in the area that we addressed today, and that you all, as representatives of the indigenous nations, would be the leaders in this and the co-organizers, as we are as a group of this conference and co-presenters, along with others perhaps. So I'd just like to go around and see whether you think that that's a worthwhile second outcome that would come out of today. Spirit Warrior, what do you think?
It is, without a doubt, required. I opened my talk today about the Igigi or Igigi that came from Mars into the area of the Norwegian, Swedish, Scandinavia Peninsula. That's how they came in through here. I have never heard until today of this race of people on Mars, partly human, partly whatever you want to call them.
Yeah,
The whole thing is just pouring out. It's also required so that the people of North America, which is the original Garden of Eden, the black-headed people's empire that was attacked, that they realize that what is coming with the BRICS nations from downtown Beijing or in the interior of China, Xi'an, Xian, an alien outpost of the Anunnaki, when you know your history. What's coming here is not pleasant. And it is here already in Brazil with the new president of Brazil, who took over from the popularly elected president of that country that they're going to try to bust up South America. What replaces it is either going to be the yuan currency, central bank digital currency in our North America language, or an indigenous Canada based on our resources financial system. The world, Alfred, the world GDP total assets, Billy Carson reported today or 3 days ago, is 700 trillion. Canada is holding the same number, oddly enough, 700 trillion, to offset the overall nonsense artificial system, virtual system of finance with real gold, silver, iridium, all the platinum, the resources that are required to live, as John said, a happy, secure, joyful experience while you're here on Mother Earth. So it's absolutely required.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sisapi, John, what is your opinion of the Indigenous Nation Conference that we're proposing to jointly?
I love the idea. What's the date again?
Yeah, the date would not be fixed. See, what we would do is we would once we get together and we have the outline of it, we would put that online, and then we would mutually generate invitees, and then we would invite them. And then once we have a requisite number, let's say 1,000, that we've emailed and invited, then we have a date, then we put the date and we send everybody that date with a link. Like if we do it on Zoom or we do it on something else. You see how we're doing it?
I think it's a great idea, but the other thing we could do is on the AIN email blasts that go out every other Tuesday and Thursday,
Yeah.
there's a list of different powwows and sacred gatherings that are happening around the globe. And
Oh,
it would be
yeah.
good if we could include that somewhere in that
Oh, yeah.
list of gatherings.
This would, what you're describing is the work that we would do in the process of organizing the conference once we all get together. See, what I hope to do is to do about 1.5 pages write-up as a draft, send it to you four, and then in about a week or two, us get together one day like this, and we polish it off and we approve it, right? And then we organize it. And then you have excellent ideas, you see, John, and everybody gives their excellent ideas from there. You follow what I'm saying?
That sounds good.
Yeah, great. Bobois, you're on mute, but do you think that that's a good idea?
Yes, it is a good idea. And when we get to this, when we do our complete our work for the council to a new country can attend, then this conference and people wanting to know what basics basic law that we're are gonna settle. We don't need tax. Corporate tax could be kept at 10%. There's no more land tax.
Oh, cool.
And so people walking with us in a conference could ask us questions about what we think about what would we put in place.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
no more fiction. So yeah, I agree with that, that we could provide that as a tool to having people understand where we're coming from.
excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Sherry LePage, what are your thoughts about this conference?
I think it creates a vortex for people to generate and enhance what's already developing in all the small pockets,
Oh, nice.
and pulls it together. And I think it'll inspire more healing,
Okay.
more releasing of the ties that bind everybody, and people stepping into their sovereign natures as a result of, these are the sparks that
Yeah,
are needed.
It's a very good term, sparks. I don't have your email address. And could you just please drop it in the group chat?
I did email you that document.
Oh, you did. So I'll get it from there then.
Yeah, the Igor
Okay,
Penna,
good.
yeah, Paradin or whatever.
Yeah, I'll get it from there.
Mhm.
Okay, so I just want to, well, I have it in mind. The steps that I'm going to do is, number one, I will invite everyone here to the first International Earth Conference for the Homo Mortis Terris, number one. Number two, you'll be, in a day or so, you'll be getting a copy of our video session here today with a sort of a news article. And number three, in a week to 2 weeks, you'll be getting a first draft, maybe a page or page and a half outline draft of a proposed draft description of the Indigenous Nations Conference, plus a date and Zoom link for us to get together to discuss it and end up with a final conference description that then we would take it as first step to begin to launch it and start generating invitee lists and getting them going off the ground. So those are the three things I will do as of today. Okay, having said that, do you have any final remarks for our watching audience, starting with Spirit Warrior?
I'll just say thank you to the audience for lifting your head up to the sky, because it's pouring in now, all the knowledge.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Zapi John.
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity, Judge Alfred, to be here today and share with all of you. And the one thing that I didn't mention that I'd like to mention, because a lot of people are going to watch this, and I just want it to be known that even the banded corporate slash status nations now, if you watch very closely, even they have realized that there doesn't have to be any division between the sovereign and them anymore either, unless they're deliberately selling out, because even those nations now are realizing that they were duped and that they were deceived by the crown, or that the crown never kept to their agreements, or the crown never had any intentions of keeping any agreements with them in the first place. And you can see this very clearly because the lawsuits by the First Nations all across Canada are popping up to the tune of 10 billion, 15 billion, 150 billion. And that's because they realize that they have been defrauded just like the rest of us. So there doesn't have to be any division there either. We can all come together, banded, sovereign, or whatever. And I need to make that point because at the start of the alliance, it was sticking strictly with sovereign Indigenous nations. But then, and as I watched the lawsuits, I said, oh, this is good. This is good. This is all of us coming together. Now's the time. And so I just wanted to point that out. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And yeah, let's continue to go forward.
Mahalo. Boys, yes, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, we've got Gilkamy here, our prize sovereign here.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
We're just going over the last little bit of what it means for us to stand above the corporation and bring people together under it to work together. So what does it mean? What does it mean to us?
Yeah, who's that?
That's Judge Alfred Weber, and then Glenn
Hi there.
and John Kabala and Sherry's there.
Those esteemed guys.
Aloha,
That's
Chief.
cool for those buggers.
That's code for those buggers. So yeah, no, I agree that it's actually fun when we have an agenda that's actually working, that people are following and working with us, and we call them tools. And what I hear often is there's a process, and people don't understand what process is. They have lots of tools. However, they don't know how to use them in the right sequence and the right purpose. And that's what our elders are bringing together is how do we attend to that purpose with the tools we have. And these hereditary councils, the matriarchs, Gilkamy, we have Mike Robinson here from the HESA too. And, you know, Adam is sitting listening to us too. So we are of the same mindset that what we're doing is correct. We have people that have different agendas that we've had to, and you know, they talked about it last night. Agendas that people bring to try to sidetrack us, infiltrators, and because our people are quite aware of people that do that, we've learned early that we can remove them pretty easily. So when we have, so thanks. Thanks, Judge. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you, boys. And Sherry, yes, would you like to share some thoughts with our
Well, sure, thank you. The one thing I've been feeling, it's more my felt sense is the building of the energy behind this is getting so powerful that I you know, it's just building so big, and I'm hearing more and more creators speak through people, and I'm in awe, and I appreciate all of everybody's efforts here, and I feel that this can be an unstoppable motion, that it is already an unstoppable motion that Creator has intended for us all to be on that Garden of Eden that we were intended to be as his creation. So I would love to have somebody have a prayer in the closing, if that would be possible.
To what? Sorry.
Have a prayer for a closing.
Boys.
Who would like
Boys got a good prayer.
Oh, boys. or Gilkamy.
or Giltamy, yeah.
Yeah, Bubba, did you hear that?
Yeah, I'll let Gilkamy go off of this one.
Okay,
I'll take it on. So thank you. And appreciate the honor to close this meeting that we had. It's a challenge. And the creator has risen to help us in our movement. He's walked alongside us. He's helped us. He's given us the information we needed. We send things to the creator. It comes back within 10 days. He's listened to us, and he's offered us a way to move forward with some of our challenges. And we thank the creator for that today. We thank you for listening, for being understanding within the various meanings that we give to words. And I know we use religion quite freely, and the creator just sees that we become unto ourselves and look after ourselves, because he helps them who help themselves. And so I'll leave that as a way of moving forward. We help ourselves. We'll move forward. We'll have people join us because they want to help and they want to see us succeed. And the creator has given us that path. So Onom Shichala, thank you very, very much. Ada Quail.
Oh, that was
amen. Okay,
Good.
well, thank you, everybody. And thank you very much. Until we
Thank you,
meet
Judge
again.
Alfred.
Until we meet again.
Well, join us in Prince Rupert.
Holla.
Miigwech.
Okay, talk to you guys later. Thanks.